So, in this video, I want to be talking about domain and how to solve for any equation. So, what is the domain? Let's define that. The domain are all the values you can put in an equation. Let's say, for example, y squared equals 4x, and get out real, actual values. In this equation, the values that you put in would be the x values right here, and the values you would get out would be the y. So the y values are dependent on the x values. So the question with the domain is, what domain values can you put in? And that's how you define the domain. So with this equation, y squared equals 4x, in order to solve the domain, we must ask what values can we put into x and get out real y values on our Cartesian plane. So let's just show Cartesian plane here real quick. X, y. I can put all these values in on the x-axis in order to get out what y values, what real values. There may be some limitations on the x-axis. So in order to solve the domain, we must first solve for y. In this case, you take the square root of both sides. These positive -2 square root of x. So what values can we put in here and actually come out with real values? Well, you can't put any negative values in because you have an I, which is not a real value, that's imaginary. So the bottom of the limit would be 0. X must be larger, or it can be equal to 0. Wait, we can put 0 in here. And we can go on until infinity. I mean, what positive value would stop us? So put in 1,000 here, it'd be fine. Okay, it'd come out fine. So we can go on to positive infinity if you will. So right there would be our domain. In another example, let's say 10y equals 3 cubed minus 4x. We solve for that. Y equals x cubed negative 4x over 10. What values can we put in here? The x values. Well, is there any limiting factors? Not that I can think of. So in this case, infinity, that would be negative infinity. X can be anywhere. If we had a variable in the denominator here, let's say our x was in a denominator, then we would have to think, well, what would make our denominator 0? Like, for example, our denominator was x negative 3. X negative 3, that was the denominator, right? X negative 3. Well, in that case, we would say, well, what would make our denominator 0? So we set x negative 3 to 0, and we solve, well, x cannot equal 3, because if it was, then we have a 0 denominator, that would give us undefined value, and therefore would limit our domain. Right? So that is how you solve for the domain. You solve for the y value and then find what limits our x values to get real numbers.